So I happen to be probably the most huge fan this very month, or if I will be too late with this video, this very year, Terminator 2 Judgment Day turns 30. It's a huge moment for any fan of the Terminator franchise, I guess, because 30 is that big generational anniversary type of stuff. And unsurprisingly, Terminator 2 is still very relevant. I mean, it was relevant when it came out, and it had the enduring type of relevance which I can demonstrate with this comic book from 1993, so it's 2 years late, and it happens to have a full page of advertisement for a video game based on Terminator 2. Why this was huge? Because at the time Terminator 2 was not supposed to have a sequel. And here we are in 2021, and it happens to have at least 4 of varying quality. And my opinion on that matter is that Terminator 3 never lived up to expectations, and it wasn't all downfall after that. I actually quite liked even Genesis for what it's worth, and what it's worth was not a fresh movie, but like a B movie. And the main problem is it's really hard to follow up Terminator 2, because Terminator 2 is like this milestone. It was relevant all throughout the decade of the 90s and inspired how 90s looked, which is kinda probably was merited, since Terminator 2 was set in 1996, which many people just happen not to know. It never explicitly says it's set in what technically was the future at that point, and it predicted the future marvelously. And I actually happen to be more of a fan of the Terminator, the original. It happens to be more dark, more visceral, more like a slasher film. It has this incredibly dark, fitting ending that this refrigerator agrees, and also Andrei Tarkovsky, of all people, agrees, was very, very deep. And it's not like Terminator 2 wasn't deep, to be honest. Terminator 2 was a filmmaking milestone, and I was actually inspired by both of the Terminator and Terminator 2 to become a filmmaker. My original intention to begin my filmmaking career was to remake both the Terminator and the Terminator 2, and then probably Terminator 3, but after I saw that, it kinda crumbled apart. But for years I was collecting info on how both the Terminator and Terminator 2 Judgment Day were made. So I happen to be a real trivia buff for both of these movies, which will probably come in handy in this very video. And I apologize for how I probably stumble a lot when I speak, because it's mostly fully improvised. It's really impromptu, and I wanted to keep it that way, mainly because main attraction looks like this. This happens to be an unopened pack of stickers and or trading cards. I'm still a bit baffled by how that whole thing works with Topps. And it is from 1991. It's a pack of initial merchandise of the Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Just like the comic book you saw, which is purely incidental, it is courtesy of Max Toys, which I'll link in the description below, even though it's a local internet shop from Ukraine, so it will probably only relevant for you from Ukraine, and if you're from here, вітаю. Треба було, мабуть, і українською записати, але що поробиш. Returning to this glorious pack, it sat unopened for 30 years. It's exactly as old as the movie. It was around when this movie happened. And my intention for this video is to open it and look at each card, sticker, or whatever I'll find inside, and I will unleash upon you a wave of trivia and production facts about everything I'll see on each card. Why this is my intention is because I wanted to illustrate to you how important merchandise can be to learn filmmaking, to learn certain intricacies between production processes. In fact, I already have some trading cards about Terminator 2 in my collection, which kind of started not so long ago, and it's a very odd collection because I collect trading cards with directors on them. You can see here Jim Henson, and you can see here James Cameron, Terminator's creators, it says right here, and what can I say more? And I actually also have 4 other different cards with James Cameron directing this very movie. All of those were taken by still photographer on set. And each of those cards, they were not by Topps, they were by Impel Marketing. But Topps dominated and still kind of dominates the trading card business, so it is kind of natural that there was also a Topps collection of Terminator 2 trading cards and stickers. So as you happen to see by the fact that I dropped one of the cards, I'm really quite nervous about approaching that because it's a bit of a treasure. It costed a bit like a treasure. It's not 25 cents anymore because it's 30 years old. It's maybe not in a pristine condition, but in really good considering it's a year older than me. So without further ado, because I don't know how I will edit that, but I'm already talking about that for like 9 minutes and it's becoming quite tedious. So without further ado, here we go. And what will we find there? And the first card we see is already a good one. So they have the thing going that at least 6 cards form that puzzle image of Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator with the endoskeleton exposed on the back side of the cards. And on the front side of the card, we can see a scene from the future war. And despite imagery of T-800 Terminators fighting with actual human soldiers is kind of what people assume future war was about. This is actually Skynet's last resort. So T-800 is not supposed to fight in the field like that. Not with skeleton exposed. It's an infiltration unit. So they sent a bunch of overcooked undercooked machines to fight actually resistance. And really, it's amazing how often people tend to overlook this beautiful moment of storytelling. And it's really a beautiful moment of storytelling because it shows to you that yes, Skynet is losing. That's why they're so adamant at sending someone in the past to just eliminate John Connor. And I'm not sure whether this was a miniature. Some miniatures were used in the beginning of Terminator 2, but from the look of it, it looks mostly like a full-scale model. And full-scale model of endoskeletons, they're really in high regard with the prop collectors, of course, even parts of endoskeletons, and there are a lot of parts because at the end of the Terminator, T-800 is kind of blown up and there are parts scattered all around, and you can find anything from elbows to whole feet and hands, and some of those were made from aluminium, some of those were made from things like polypropylene, because obviously they were not allowed to explode a real metal thing in close proximity to actors and even stunt doubles and even crew. So main exploding Terminator in the first movie was made from something very far from metal, actually. So it says the killing machine. And another interesting detail is Terminator 2 actually is the first time we see this weapon. It's the same plasma rifle Terminator mentions in the first movie. And for the Terminator 2 Judgment Day sequel, they managed to construct this on top of an existing weapon. It's a part of Calico, a series of assault rifles, which looked very futuristic for late 80s and early 90s and were often used in all kinds of science fiction movies. For example, Total Recall which also starred Arnold Schwarzenegger. So the next card is a Clash of Titans. This one actually has a description on the back. And here it goes. Here is, of course, Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor and John Furlong as John Connor. Both performances were terrific. And here we can see Robert Patrick as Liquid Metal Terminator T-1000 and Arnold Schwarzenegger as T-800. And it's not a moment actually appearing in the movie, mind you, because there is no position like that in any scene in the steel mill, but what we can see here is the moment before T-1000 impales T-800 on this metal rod. It's an interesting fact that metal rod is in the climaxes of both Terminator movies. And in both movies it is used to harm the Arnold Schwarzenegger's character. And what I love about this is that they have a continuation scene in which Terminator T-800 revives himself from the harm done by the metal rod, which not only impales him, it destroys his generator. So he uses the alternate power source, which is never disclosed what it is exactly. And some speculate it was heat from the steel mill, but I kinda like the symbolic quality of this moment, because he just really revives himself and kinda demonstrates again that he's not just a machine anymore. He's something bigger. He's something more akin to human, which is interesting. And of course, the scene that follows this revival, it is actually what is called in filmmaking a pickup shot. It was shot way after most of the principal photography wrapped, and as far as I remember, in December. And James Cameron just got Arnold Schwarzenegger, ripped him out of all the Christmas spirit and cheer and said, hey, we need to film an additional sequence of you excluding that metal rod from you. And it's actually, despite being way less than a minute, one of the most cool sequences in this whole movie. And it is a movie filled with cool sequences. Yeah. And the awkwardness continues with man versus machine. Two stills, one on front and one on the back, showing adult John Connor, scarred, seasoned, a real military leader. And here is an interesting part. It's a minigun machine gun, heavy duty machine gun, one they install on helicopters, and the same exact make and model T-800 uses later in the film in the past, in the 90s. A lot of people tend to overlook that. And it says 3 billion human lives ended on August 29th, 1997. Which is an interesting thought, because I like counting body counts of movies, and people often tend to overlook mentions, and I'm so inclusive, I will include like taxidermized animals and things like that. It's all done on Film Body Counts Wiki, which I will link in the description too, if in case anyone is interested. I will probably at least start making a Terminator 2 page by that point, but it probably will be unfinished, and so. But I actually have a great page for the Terminator. It's my pride and joy, because not only it accounts a very inclusive and probably most complete body count of that movie ever, including accounting every single skull in the future scene, but it also happens to be the only conclusive scene by scene screen time count of Arnold Schwarzenegger in this movie, which which is amazingly like 16 minutes of just Arnold Schwarzenegger and 26 minutes of his character, the 800 in general. So that's all you need to create a perfect menacing villain in the movie, which lasts for more than 100 of minutes. Like, he's the main guy of this movie. He's on the posters, his name comes first in the main titles, and yet he's not in it for a very major bulk of the movie. It's interesting, I guess. So, what else can I say about that? You can see here a uniform with surname Connor, of course, and there was actually an auctioned prop from the first movie, the Terminator, which was a slightly different uniform with the name Connor on it. So they wanted to have scenes like that in the first movie, and they even made props, but they ran out of budget and they never shoot those. And budgetary restraints really show up a lot in the first movie, when, especially in the scenes of future war, because what we can see in the future war is those epic battles, and if you look closely, some of the shots of people killed are reused. So they reuse extras, like here's a man dying in the long shot, and then here's the same man dying in a close-up, so that you wouldn't notice. And editing really makes that work. And they have even more top-notch editing in Terminator 2 Judgment Day, which is amazing because they had to have 3 editors, because otherwise they wouldn't have finished that movie in time, because amount of filmed footage is staggering. It's like something unbelievable, like 120 hours. I wonder whether anyone on this planet saw all of those uninterrupted. Probably James Cameron himself, because I would say it's his style of directing. He controls everything. He controls every bit of footage. So, next card is just a nice shot of Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator. Judging by the background, it is probably from the scenes in Pescadero mental asylum. Yes, the back of the card actually confirms that. And what it also says is it just reiterates what happens in the movie. And of course it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his glory in this shot, and he has everything. He has cool shades, leather jacket stolen from a biker, and of course Winchester from 1800s, which is a real 19th century weapon, and they had 3 different real sawn-off shotguns for this movie, which looks slightly different. There are a few people who can actually tell you shot by shot which is where. Like, they have slightly different styles of gouge and slightly different barrels, and of course slightly different handles. And what else can I say about that? Of course, it was a huge spoiler for this movie, actually, somehow, that the Terminator is a good guy this time around. And how on earth they managed to keep that secret almost until the movie got released is beyond me, because filming must have been huge. And it was probably a blast seeing this movie for the first time, not knowing that the Terminator, that was a really menacing villain in the first movie, this time is actually one of the protagonists. And we're 4 cards in, and we have 1 left. Oh, this is a good one. It says The Refuge. And this sequence is one of the climatic chase sequences in the movie. You can see a blown off, turned around police car in here. And you can see Terminator with an assault rifle looking menacingly. And Sarah Connor is already shot a few times, but she's still kicking it. But what is on the background is even more interesting, because this scene does not appear in the theatrical cut of the film. This scene is a deleted scene when it comes to the main version of the movie. It is, of course, that scene where Sarah and John remove the processor from T800 and kind of slightly reprogram it to be more adaptable. And the funny stuff is, in the first movie, you can clearly see that this guy was already more adaptable from the get-go. So either Skynet sent a really bugged and non-checked Terminator in the past, or they made an interesting call to send a wild card in the past. I really wonder why they used this shot for the back of this card, because it makes no sense in terms of sequence order. We can see it's sequence 17, but this was supposed to be much earlier in the movie, if it's in the movie, because it's not in all of the versions. But it's interesting that director's cut of Terminator 2 is probably one of the most shown director cuts ever. Like, on Ukrainian television it actually became a default version of this movie. And I haven't seen a theatrical version of Terminator 2 in years, in the late 90s and early 2000s. Which is fascinating, because usually director cuts are not that popular. It's a niche thing, but this movie was so huge that everything about it was huge. Which is, I don't know, kind of appropriate, because this movie shaped a lot of filmmakers over the years. This movie is golden standard of how you do the sequel, how you escalate without being obnoxious, without overdoing it or underdoing it or doing something wrong. And I would argue it's actually one of the closest things to perfect sequel around here. Like Evil Dead 2 will probably suffice as well. Maybe Phantasm 2 for those who know this. And but otherwise most sequels have their problems, and they're slightly different movies. And what can I say about this in general? It is actually a great collection of trading cards, and it's kind of interesting that there are no doubles in this pack, and I have 5 different cards, and all of them are really interesting to have as a collector. And I will also, of course, preserve this package, which is kind of cool and kind of very 90s looking. It's mind-boggling that this movie is 30 already, because for me it's kind of mind-boggling I'm almost 30 already, and that this video is almost 30 minutes already, unless I edit it a lot. And God, it probably will need that, because of exactly pauses like that. Oh, and it also rains outside. Yeah, that always helps when you film a video, right? So I kind of already concluded it, so I'm just bumbling at this point, am I? So, yeah. Terminator 2, or T2 as it's called in assorted promotional materials. And Tobbs really did a good job on this. Trading cards, also there are way less cards with director on them. And I would kind of love to collect even more cards with James Cameron on them. Probably one of the top 5 most inspiring filmmakers in my book, out of those who really inspired me, myself, as a filmmaker. He, of course, comes short when it comes to Alfred Hitchcock, but James Cameron is really a great and inspiring filmmaker who thinks everything through. And it kind of even comes blatantly through in merchandise of the movie. Oh, and for a post-credit scenes, it just occurred to me why these are called stickers, despite them clearly being trading cards. You can actually use them as a sticker. But I want, I really like how they come as the cards, and I generally have this problem now that I have a lot of stickers and nowhere to actually glue them. And I kind of feel really glad that I glued them on wrong surfaces, so I just collect stickers and hoard them, and they're like not stickers, they're unsticked stickers or something.